Hey, Bill.
Hey Maro, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. How are you?
Yeah, same here, same here. I'm doing all right. I'm surviving,
Yeah,
surviving. A very tough time, I think, for everybody. So it's kind
for sure. And we're supposed to get a week of snow and ice at least here, so I guess also in Brussels.
yeah, I don't know. It's just been raining constant last few weeks. It's nuts.
Uh,
Bit of snow
s-
would be nice. Yeah.
so to start off, maybe a good idea would be to explain a bit who is Bill Griffin?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I'm kind of involved in a few activities, but I suppose the main focus at the moment is I'm managing director for a CBD brand in the UK called LXR Direct. It was quite an exciting time for LXR. We're kind of putting in our novel food application, things like this. But I'm also kind of have various clients. So I'm working as a freelance consultant within the cannabis industry, offering service of communications, writing. Yeah, and I have a few clients, kind of in the industry, events, and trade organizations, things like this.
Yeah, those are already quite some subjects we could delve deeper into.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe go first through the story of yeah, how did you end up working with this LXR?
That actually came about through some contacts I made with a client. So I met a guy called Mark Burbage, who runs a CBD white label company, and he's really passionate about all things cannabis and really knowledgeable. I mean, I've kind of in my work as a journalist and a writer within the cannabis space, I obviously meet a lot of very knowledgeable people on the topic, but Mark seems particularly aware of a lot of different aspects of the plant. And we kind of hit it off, and we got on very well. And kind of in the conversation, Mark kind of brought up that he developed a range of CBD products, and he was interested in finding a way to brand these and to create a brand. And I think he sort of planted the seed with me. And I kind of went off and thought about it. I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to just take a product and slap labels on it and get it out there. I wanted to find a nice kind of slant on it. And my writing has always been, because I was kind of a cannabis patient myself, and I use CBD quite a lot. So I kind of thought I know what I write about is very much from a consumer point of view. So I thought if we could kind of create this kind of consumer orientated brand, and that would be a really good way. And then kind of my pitch to Mark, I was like, so came back to him after a couple of days, was like, okay, the UK needs healing. It was kind of pre Brexit, and things were just a real mess. It's like the UK needs healing, and how we're going to heal it is we're going to distribute as many cannabinoids as we can across the nation. And so, in order to do that, you have to kind of have this sort of very accessible brand that's kind of very honest and good value for money, all this kind of thing. So Mark loved that idea. So then we cracked on, and the name Elixir doesn't actually stand for anything. It's just kind of like
I was just gonna ask.
it's yeah, it's like a reduction of elixir, like
Oh,
which is kind of like a potion of life or something like this.
yeah.
So it has very sort of ancient sort of connotations, but I sort of gave it this kind of a modern twist. So how I imagine the brand is I always try and imagine it in a pharmacy, so lined up in a pharmacy and not looking out
Yeah.
of place. So we don't have cannabis leaves all over it, and we're not all focused on that. It's really kind of sort of clean and scientific, and we have this sort of big bold LXR on the labels. Because I mean, so with the products are little tinctures, so little 10 ml bottles. So you're very limited space to put branding. What I notice is a lot of companies, they just sort of fill this little tiny space with all loads of information.
Mhm.
But yeah, I wanted the name to really stand out. So that's why it's nice and short and bold. So then after kind of working with Mark, we was kind of quite rapidly, we sort of, I think, when you hit on an idea that sort of seems good and it's got traction, that you kind of get things done quite quickly. But there was another colleague that both of us were working with at the time, a woman called Dr. Parveen Batara, and she has a huge kind of history of within the pharmaceutical industry of bringing cannabinoid products to market. And she'd been very impressed with Mark and kind of his approach. And I think it was me who let slip to Parveen that I was working with Mark, and she's like, "Working with Mark?" It's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" It's like, so then, and she was giving me all this like fantastic advice, and we should do this, we need to do that, this, that, the other, and I was like, "Well, why don't you join us?" It took a little bit of convincing, but finally she did, and so now that we have the three co-founders, we have kind of Parveen, who's the kind of regulatory and compliance expert. We have Mark, who's this sort of manufacturing and innovation and making the products, and Parveen as well doing kind of innovation. And then myself as I'm quite lucky to be tagging along. So I mean, I've got I suppose I have the consumer view on how the company should go, and I'm kind of like the spokesperson, the managing director, and with my writing and the kind of press contacts that I have and things. We complement each other quite well. We're doing okay. We're doing okay.
Yeah, I think that's quite important indeed, in the team. And one of the things you do to change it up a bit instead of just selling CBD is you have products that are mixed with terpenes, right?
Yeah. So what it was kind of an idea I'd kind of stumbled upon in one of the many conversations that I'd had across as a writer, and that was this sort of concept of kind of deconstructing cannabis, and then sort of kind of putting it back together in a bottle, because it's a plant. It's very difficult to have a consistent product. So kind of as an example, Besproken. I mean, they're selling flowers and distributing flowers. I know people have very sort of mixed opinion of Besproken and kind of just sort of the whole philosophy of this. But what they really have, yeah. I mean, so because they exist within kind of medicine kind of sphere, that they have to produce a very consistent product. And as it's a plant, it's a very difficult thing to do. Any kind of environmental impact on the plant as it's growing is going to change the cannabinoid profile or terpene profile or the kind of end results. And I think Bedrocan products, even though they are kind of uber controlled, I don't think any human touches the plant hardly throughout the process. And it's all controlled by engineers, and it's not how people would typically think cannabis is grown. Even then, it's still, I think it fluctuates quite a lot, the actual cannabinoid profile and terpene profile within the plants. So by kind of deconstructing cannabis and taking an isolate or a distillate, and then adding your terpenes back into it, you can kind of create a consumer product that when the kind of consumer returns to it, then they know that they're going to have the same as the previous time, which is what you have to have if you want to sell in pharmacies and supermarkets and garages, even, or corner shops and things.
And then what about the whole idea of having a whole plant CBD and it's well?
Yeah, I mean that I love as well. It's just kind of, I mean, one thing that we're trying to do as a company is be very much within the regulatory environment that kind of exists within the UK. So this has been defined. I mean, it started from the European Commission. So the European Commission kind of said that CBD and all cannabinoids are classified as novel foods. So novel foods is more or less it's a safety evaluation of a food ingredient to kind of go through this process to prove that it's safe and it's not going to have any sort of detrimental effect on consumers. So In the UK, so a lot of so when the EFSA, European Food Safety Agency, I think they're called, when they said this, a lot of countries just kind of banned CBD. I think Austria would be an example, and maybe Spain as well. But the UK didn't. So they had this kind of like grey area where people were still kind of selling CBD products, and the market just grew and grew and grew. I mean, they talk about this kind of anxiety economy. And I guess if you're facing Brexit, you're facing all other kind of Trump is in power. There's a lot of things to sort of feel anxious about. And this is before COVID came along, so it's even worse now.
Yeah.
But people really found that they found benefit in CBD, and this kind of huge market came about. So one of my clients was called the Center of Medicinal Cannabis, and we did a market sizing report. So in 2019, we estimated that the UK CBD market was worth £300 million, which is
Already quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like bigger than vitamin A bigger than vitamin C and D combined at the time. Maybe sales of vitamin D have gone up now thanks to COVID, but it was growing at an alarming rate. It was growing like sort of 15, 16% a year. So they reckon it would be a £1 billion market by 2025, which is what, sort of 1.4 billion euros. So it was big, and it was too big to just shut down. Too many people were relying upon it, and shutting it down would just push it into the black market, and it would be a disaster. So the Food Standards Agency in the UK said that we'll take the same approach as the European Commission, and we recognise CBD as a novel food. And so they kind of made an announcement on the 13th of February 2020, saying that anybody who's on the market at this time has a kind of grace period in which so they can keep the products on the market. There shouldn't be any new products coming to the market, but existing products on the market can go ahead and put together their novel food applications, which then need to be submitted by the 31st of March this year. So it's kind of getting close to the almost, some might say the finishing line, but for some it's the starting line. So I mean, it's a fantastic. If you're on the market before February 2020, and you are geared up and ready to kind of get to grips with the regulatory framework, I think it's a very big opportunity for companies.
Yeah, because there's also the UK is now then taking a step in regulating this. In the Netherlands, we have still seen anything from it.
Yeah, and from a consumer point of view, it's really good. Where it's not so great is the smaller brands. It's just the cost of putting together a novel food application is quite prohibitive for smaller brands. But then you could argue that if people are taking it because they're sick, or they're whatever sort of reason they're taking it for, should they be taking it from somebody who's making it in their garage? There needs to be some kind of bar that people have to kind of aim for. And we don't know if CBD is 100% safe, because we just don't have the data. That's why we have to kind of go through this novel food process, is to prove.
It's for every product you sell?
Yes. So every product will have their own application. That's because every product is a different formulation.
Yeah.
So you don't know what impact a certain terpene might have on the CBD, on its shelf life, whether it degrades, and all this kind of stuff. So these are all the kind of tests that you need to do. But then on the other hand, you mentioned the kind of full plant CBD, and that's I think I'm from my core of how I kind of found my way into the cannabis industry. I'm very much a kind of a believer in the full plant as a medicine, and I'm not, as myself as a personal consumer, I don't really mind if the cannabinoid profile is changing from product to product. But I think as with my sort of business hat on, of kind of trying to run this company, it's very important that we are very consistent in our products.
When and how were you actually convinced about CBD?
Yeah, wow. So, to be honest, I didn't know that CBD existed. For me, cannabis was cannabis, and cannabis was something that helped me. So I kind of,
Mhm.
I was having health issues that it took quite a long time for the doctors to kind of figure out what was wrong. And in the meantime, they were giving me all these different pills to treat the different symptoms. And one of the symptoms was anxiety and panic attacks. So it turned out it was I had a tumor that was growing on my adrenal gland. So it was messing up all of my hormones. So I was I was up and down basically,
Mhm.
and kind of I could get very anxious. And cannabis helped me with this. So actually, cannabis helped me avoid a lot of the drugs that the doctor had been prescribing me. So although we didn't know what was wrong, the consuming cannabis was helping me with anxiety and depression and not being able to sleep and all these things. But it was only when, so I kind of, this kind of state of anxiety has probably been something that's been around since my teens. And for me, it kind of became normal. And then the first time I tried CBD was at Cultivar in Austria, the cannabis show.
Yeah.
And it was like almost instantly, I kind of felt this relief of a kind of a freedom and escape from this anxiety. And I was like, wow, this is normal. This is what other people feel like. This is amazing. So
How long
it
ago was that?
was really, yeah. So that would have been what, 2011, 2012, something like this.
That's quite early, actually. Yeah, to already stumble upon
Yeah,
the CBD weed. I was,
yeah.
I had still,
Maybe later. Yeah.
in that time, I had not heard about CBD yet. That really came for me around, yeah, later.
Yeah, no, it could be later than that. But anyway, it did really help me, and I think sort of, and then kind of learning about the CBD kind of interplay with THC, I
Mhm.
found very fascinating, and it was a real kind of eye opener for me. Because although I was kind of drawn to cannabis, because I was probably, my body was feeling the benefit from CBD and whatever other cannabinoids are in there, although kind of with as you know, with a lot of the modern strains. Not so much now, but kind of in the past, they were very high THC and almost nothing in CBD.
Especially what you would find in the coffee shops area.
Yeah, and very high THC is not the best for me. It doesn't it doesn't really help your anxiety when you start kind of going on a sort of paranoia and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But well, what I kind of discovered was that if you have a 1-to-1 ratio, at least, of THC and CBD, then it is very manageable and very pleasant. And that's kind of what I aim for.
Mm.
But that's maybe because I'm quite sensitive to I'm quite sensitive to all drugs, legal and illegal, and so it just helps balance it for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember a time I was in Switzerland at this Cannabis Expo, which was indeed, of course, mostly CBD. And there, I did actually have some highs from Morocco with THC or some concentrates with me,
Mm.
and I mixed it in with the CBD flowers, and I was
Mm.
expecting to have quite a nice experience, but in the end,
Right.
nothing really happened because I did not get stoned. I did not get high. I basically
Oh
was not.
well.
I was not high for like all the weekends, kind of.
Oh well.
It was interesting, but
So,
I was very focused. I was very clear-headed, etc. So.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny how it affects different. I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons why cannabis is very hard to integrate into the health system is because of the different effects it has on different people.
But yeah, that's why it's just simply important that when you buy it, there it should say on the label what it is. As many
Yeah,
details that you can give
yeah,
it, whether it's through a link or whatever, that we can at least see the not just the cannabinoid levels, but also the terpene levels and stuff. People can do some research and they can really fine tune what they need for themselves, and which is pleasant, whether it's medicinally or recreationally.
yeah. I mean, Leafly was a service that I used. I mean, but you've got. I mean, it can vary from plant to plant as well. And this is kind of one of the big one of the big problems that you have with prohibition is that there's no kind of accountability within the supply chain, and nobody's checking that it's safe. Nobody's checking that it's not been adulterated with whatever to make it sparkle, to make it sticky,
Yeah.
make it heavy, and nobody's really testing it to tell you what the cannabinoid profile is. You know, if I could go to a coffee shop and I'd be like, okay, that one's 25% THC and 0.5% CBD, then I know that it's probably not going to work too well for me because I'm kind of walking around in a foreign town. But if there's something that's say 10% THC, 10% CBD, then if I know that up front, then that's quite reassuring. I think you can. You haven't got this. It's not like taking a lottery ticket of finding out which strain is going to mess you up the most, which is maybe fun for some people.
Yeah, I would say no, but I'm personally quite a
Mm,
conscious consumer, and that I really, well, the thing is that you always have to try first to know what, okay, this is what this kind of
yeah.
weed or hash is doing to me, and then I've in my head I schedule it in like, oh, this is one that's for this kind of circumstances at this kind of hour. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, where I can cope with high THC would be, at a festival or something. It's sunny and
Mm.
everybody's happy and it's a nice, relaxed atmosphere. But when you're, I don't know, if it's kind of in the evening and you're kind of negotiating from the coffee shop back to your hotel and you don't really know the neighborhoods, your brain can start like, I'm gonna get mugged.
Yeah, no, Amsterdam can be quite complicated, even for Dutch people, I have to admit.
Yeah, yeah. There's all these sort of silent threats, like the cyclists and trams and things like this. That if you're coming from the UK, you're looking in the wrong direction. And
Also, for sure. Yeah, now that's a little bridge. I said Amsterdam, and yeah, I'm just also curious, really, to your thoughts on yeah, the idea that you might not be allowed anymore to enter the coffee shops anymore in Amsterdam if it's up to the mayor and the prosecutor and the police.
yeah, I think that's really, really sad. I mean, I've seen over the years. I've been traveling to Amsterdam to frequent the coffee shops since
Mm,
'90s, and I had a lot of kind of favorite coffee shops that have since closed. So that was kind of sad that they were already kind of clamping down on the numbers of
yeah.
coffee shops. But I mean, that was the reason why I went to Amsterdam. I mean, I have found over the years Amsterdam does have other qualities. I guess as I get older, I kind of appreciate these. But I mean, the weather's usually crap and food's not amazing like Brussels or some other cities. So if you remove the weed, it's like what are you left with? Kind of
Very shitty
New
food.
Zealand. So it's
Interesting
it's
thought.
sad. Yeah. But I mean, I've seen kind of over the years as the coffee shops have kind of evolved. I mean, it's sort of, I guess, it kind of spearheaded by the greenhouse, which I know people have opinions on greenhouse coffee shop. But what they did very well was make a really beautiful environment and a very sort of strong brand. And a lot of other sort of coffee shop chains seem to have trying to emulate this. There's one in particular which I don't even want to attempt to pronounce the name. They're not like Boyongas or something like this.
Yeah, but there's also a problem actually. Sorry to interrupt with these chains
Mm.
now. Well, not per se from our point of view, but the mayor also said they want to crack down on the chains.
Oh wow! So there's kind of commercialization of it.
They are actually the problem also, or the cause of this whole debate, because they're going down by their own success if it continues to go this way. Because
Mm.
you have to understand that, coffee shops were, as luckily for us, named as essential businesses, and they should, because
Yeah.
you could see on the first day what
Mm.
otherwise happens. So,
Yes. Yes.
but all the other shops are closed, and there are still in front of some of these coffee shops there are huge lines, going around the block,
Right.
and there are these
Wow.
businessmen that are very limited or even have to be closed, and they get frustrated, seeing every day the coffee shop has its, customers anyways there all the way over his
Yeah.
terrace as well.
Yeah.
So they start to complain, and then yeah, more people decided to also complain. But in general, this group of businessmen from Amsterdam, it's not so big.
I mean, surely because Amsterdam is famous for these coffee shops, it's bringing in all these tourists, then it's going to benefit the entire city. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's and there's so many causes also to it, which Amsterdam itself is to blame. First of all, they've actually invested in doing PR for the city and getting more tourists actually
Mm,
to Amsterdam.
mm.
And then on the other hand, they have closed so many coffee shops. So the few that are left, yes,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're getting
they will be
super busy.
busier. So
Yeah.
it's the city of Amsterdam is right now it's fighting with itself, it seems.
And it doesn't really make sense because you got like alcohol is a far more dangerous and destructive drug than cannabis. And
Yeah.
they're not closing. They're not closing all the bars. They're not restricting everywhere that
Oh,
can. I mean, if you see like sometimes when I go to Amsterdam, you see these kind of big bunches of British kind of stag doos and things like this, all in a real state, stumbling around and acting quite disrespectfully to the town, but they're all drunk.
yeah,
It's not because they're high; it's because they're
no.
drunk.
And
Yeah.
it's also generalizing indeed. They often talk about the English. That's also why I find it interesting to ask you this question. But they also put all of the English basically on one heap. They
Yeah.
think that every Englishman is coming there to drink
Yeah.
himself to death and smoke some weed. But
Yeah.
there's quite different people. The people that are coming really for the weed, they might have a drink also, but they're mostly relaxed.
Mm.
They're fine. They don't cause any hassle. They etc. But there are
Yeah.
indeed
Yeah. And they'll
also
go to a music venue or a restaurant or a museum and stuff. Yeah.
100%. And they are not the problem. It are more the people that come to Amsterdam who see it as a sort of Disneyland,
No
for adults,
rules. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
if you stick with weed, okay, but if you are indeed consuming too much alcohol, you become a nuisance at some point.
Mm.
Well, some people at least, but yeah, if there are many people coming, you're gonna have many nuisances. Simple
Yeah.
as
But you're living in Eindhoven, aren't you?
yes.
And there's that drag, that street where it's full of, it seems to be just 100% bars.
Oh yeah.
And there's one nice coffee shop on the end. I don't know if it's still open, but
At the end,
yeah, it's kind of a
no,
crazy environment. Oh, it's not. I forgot
no,
what
it,
it's called.
it had to close. You mean the bakkerij?
Yes, yes, that sounds familiar. Yes.
The bar where you can also have a beer inside and have a
Yeah,
smoke.
there's like a bar on one side and there's a coffee shop, and I think they have a private, or they used to have a private
Yeah.
coffee shop behind or something. Yeah.
No, that was also great, but was also basically ruined by the municipality and shit. So
Mm.
it's also a
Yeah.
long story, and I
Yeah.
would like to
So,
have at
I
some
mean,
point the story also on
yeah,
the podcast.
yeah,
I
yeah,
will.
yeah, I do, yeah. I'll learn Dutch so I can hear it. The but it is. I mean, it's not just Amsterdam. It was, Maastricht a long time ago. They blocked tourists from coming. So Maastricht was. I mean, Amsterdam was kind of where I started to go to get pick up weed from the coffee shops, but obviously it's more expensive than other places. But Maastricht is very accessible from Belgium, so I'm living in near Brussels, so I used to go there, and that was a while ago, wasn't it? And they closed. Didn't they close it to not only foreigners, but people who are not it didn't have an ID card from Maastricht as well?
Yeah, in the beginning it was very, very, very controlled. Yeah, so even I had problems coming into the coffee shops with my Dutch ID and showing that I'm born in the Netherlands. It was not enough. You needed to have a
Wow,
letter of proof of that you're living here. That your address was on there. That would be fine.
wow, wow!
Actually, before that, you actually had to get this paper printed by the government for like 10 euros or maybe more per month
All right,
or
to
something.
say you're an active cannabis consumer.
Sort of. No, yeah, that's basically the translation of it. Yeah, for sure. But that was also causing problems, for all the expats that are living here, and they had to also get this paper, and they had to pay for it for such a drag, and it caused so much problems in the beginning, and it was all just because of parking problems or parking issues in Maastricht.
Yeah.
That was the biggest nuisance
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I guess it was a sort of prime location for Belgians and French and Germans. So,
But I heard
yeah.
now about Maastricht that it's like a ghost town. There's not this
All
lively
right, all
city
right.
anymore.
Nobody goes anymore.
That was already before the Corona. I mean, so
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Holland had the coffee shops kind of. You don't get it anywhere else in Europe. When you got the cannabis social clubs in Spain,
yeah.
but until there is some kind of
Mm.
recreational acceptance and distribution in other countries, then it is going to be difficult for the Netherlands, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and when they do open again to the public, you'll be happy with it that there will be no more tobacco being mixed or tobacco being smoked anymore in the coffee shop.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I stopped smoking in like 2007. So
Hmm.
yeah.
And now I know you're actually from your cannabis journalism, and
Mm.
there's very few people who are doing this, but I can only, yeah, it's also what I'm doing. So I'm curious to your story, and also for the listeners who are also looking to start writing, for example, about it. How did that start?
Yeah, so I mean, it was all to do with having this kind of medicinal need for cannabis, and kind of discovering how much it could help me. I then kind of uh, kind of tried to teach myself to be self-sufficient with it, to grow it myself. But I think you go through this phase when you really sort of get into cannabis and you kind of see what the situation is. And this is kind of, this is before it had been legalized recreationally, like anywhere in the world. Maybe 2008, 2009, I kind of started writing about it. That you kind of go through this kind of process, or you have this kind of real, almost like a rage, this kind of anger, of like, my God, we've been lied to for all these years, all this devastation you're doing, locking up all these people for growing kind of therapeutic herbs and or smoking a joint or whatever, and how
Hmm.
wrong it is, and how the research has been blocked, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that kind of drives you into kind of an activist kind of mode, I guess. So this sort of fueled me, and almost like every conversation I would have with anybody, it would like turn into this sort of cannabis rant. I think I probably like got people kind of trying to avoid me. My family encouraged me to, like, why don't you write a book about it? Why don't you write a book about all this stuff? So I did, and it was called Windows of Weed because at the time how I started to grow, I didn't have any space for a grow tent. I didn't have a garden, so I was just growing it on my balcony in the little apartment in Brussels. And then after kind of finished this book, which I self-published, I was like, okay, now I need to promote it. So I started to. I mean, my career up to this point, well, I suppose like still is in communications. So it's always been writing and communications and writing for the web and things like
Hmm.
this. So I just kind of took these skills and thought, well, if I start writing articles about cannabis, I can present it in this really sort of matter of fact, hopefully easy to read and kind of enjoyable articles. And then if people enjoy that, then they might be sort of drawn to the book that I wrote. So that was how I started to write, and I think so. The first kind of paid gig writing was writing for the Marijuana Times, which is an American site based out of Los Angeles, I think, or San Diego. Um, and I was like the boots on the ground in Europe, and I would go to different events and different sort of cannabis related activities and write for them about what's going on in Europe. And in doing this, I sort of realized that all these sort of different people I was talking to, so talking to doctors, talking to scientists, talking to coffee shop owners, talking to growers, all these different people, and I kind of realized that, hang on, I'm no expert, and I know a lot about cannabis, and I know like different bits from different aspects of it, but I'm not an expert in any of these things. But where I was an expert, where I kind of felt confident, was that I knew what I did that day. So if I went to Cannabis, or if I went to Cultivar, or if I went to one of the events that you and Derek are running, like Cannabis Liberation Day or the Homegrow Cup, then I could write about what I did that day because I knew what it was. So some of them would be quite fun and quite funny. But this writing led me to as I was writing the sort of cannabis industry in the UK. So when I started, the cannabis industry was basically cannabis, seed companies, coffee shops, and a few of the other events, Cultivar and what have you in Europe. But then things started to get legalized more and more in the US, and people's, I suppose, kind of woke up to the possibilities of cannabis. And the kind of recreational cannabis was legalized in Canada, and then the event shifted. They shifted from this kind of aiming at kind of cannabis fans. I mean, things like Cannabis and that there's a little bit like sort of visiting a circus. If you're like a stoner and you're really into cannabis and you go to one of these places, you're like, wow, when you get to see, the people from Greenhouse, and maybe you see Jose Cervantes and things like this, and
Oh yeah.
it's really great. But they shifted this, so they changed these kind of business focused events, which kind of as a journalist I would go along to these as well. And then the money was starting to come in, so they've kind of got these very well funded companies who are desperately seeking professionals who were knowledgeable on cannabis. So I kind of sort of fitted into that quite well because as I was kind of working in communications since 97, 98, and I've been working for like cable companies. Comcast was my first job, and I'm working at Belgacom TV in Belgium and Swift in Belgium.
Yeah,
So
big
quite sort of
companies.
very sort of kind of corporate big companies. So I know how these sort of companies operate, but then also I know about cannabis, and marry these together, and it's quite it was quite good. They kind of one job led to another.
Yeah.
So, but the writing shift. The writing's not as fun now. The writing shifted from being first person to being third person. I
Mhm.
noticed like if you write in the third person, you tend to get paid more than if you write in the first person. Um, but it's
It's
not
true,
as fun. I like doing these sort of gonzo pieces rather than
for sure.
writing about
I,
medicinal cannabis or whatever. It's a bit dry.
yeah, I still do kind of all of it, like except
Mm,
maybe. Okay, I don't write about psychedelics anymore, but about cannabis it can go indeed from a first person to third person to helping on a press release or writing a blog for our
yeah,
foundation or
yeah.
for the website, obviously, or columns which are then a bit different. I can give more of my opinion.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice to hear that. I don't know if you find the same, that it's kind of like it's like playing an instrument. It's like the more you do it, the kind of easier it is. Like people that really have a problem about writing,
For sure.
just tell them they have to write like 600 words. Like, oh my god, it's like really like
Takes me half an hour.
yeah, exactly. So it takes it as long as it takes just to sort of sit down and write it.
Yeah.
So that's nice. I mean, it's nice that then you can then apply that to help other people. Because in the
Yeah, it
end,
is.
we're all working for the planet. We're all working to sort of progress it into society. So it's nice to use these skills. And if you get paid along the way, then that's all the better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually started writing a book first before I started my first website, the Stone Society. And before that, of course, other
Oh,
things happened. I was already on the internet a lot and making forums and playing video games and already doing these, this talking on the internet with people. I would be doing that all day, right? And so
right, right.
in the end, yeah, it's nice to be able to put all of those skills to use for indeed the plant, because the plant
Yeah.
doesn't have anyone else. It can't stand up for itself. Yeah,
Mm,
and
mm.
it feels good doing whatever I'm doing, because I think any
Yeah,
promotion of
yeah,
the plant is pretty much a good one, unless you're talking shit
yeah,
about it, and then
yeah.
I will have to debunk you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was one of the motivating factors for when I was getting into writing, was just seeing how terribly it's reported in the national press.
Oh, 100%, yes.
And so then rather than just sort of rant and rave about this, to say, okay, well, this is how you can write about it. I had an article that was published on the Mail on Sunday. That was like
Okay, nice.
because I mean they were kind of one of the main culprits of this sort of cannabis bashing.
Yeah, and Sun
really
and anything from the Murdoch empire.
Yeah.
They should give him a joint. Maybe then, yeah, it might trickle
Yeah,
down.
see the world in a different light. Yeah, chill out a bit. Yeah, he's got a real chip on his shoulder, I think.
Yeah. No, I just watched this TV show about it, and yeah, it was quite good actually. It was more about Fox News, which obviously plays a big role in it, and then knowing the destruction he has caused in across the world, also.
Yeah. I mean, starting in Australia, then moving to the UK, and then to the US, he's kind of left this sort of trail of destruction behind him.
Also, basically, Brexit is what came before Trump, right? That's how we see it. At least from the Netherlands, we see it like we first had our own. We had a sort of populist, right-wingish.
Yeah, is it Gert Welders or something? Is it called?
Yeah, before that we had Pim Fortuyn. He was shot, a politician. He was about to become prime minister,
Oh,
and then he basically caused Geert Wilders. Geert Wilders kind of caused what we saw in the UK with Brexit and stuff, and or general the populism that's being on the rise, and that again to Trump.
yeah, it's really it's horrible for me to watch because I'm from the UK. I grew up there. I came to Belgium my late 20s for a 3 month contract. I'm still here 21 years later. But to watch it from the outside has been pretty tough. What kind of gets me is that people have been lied to, so they're sort of making this sort of major decision based upon lies, and then ultimately, because of that, they're going to suffer. Some of the towns where the European Commission has really invested heavily to improve the infrastructure, sports facilities, and everything else in the town, they're not going to get that money anymore. And I don't think the Tories really let the money sort of trickle out of London when they're sort of southeast. Yeah, it's and then the younger generation as well. I mean, for me, kind of, so I grew up in the northeast of the UK in a town called Stockton-on-Tees, and after sort of my first job there, then I moved down to London, and after London, I moved to Brussels. It was really there was no sort of barriers to that. You kind of just took it for granted. I've worked in the south of France, and there was no kind of red tape around any of this. But that's changed now. So you're stuck on this island.
Yeah, and it's also causing a lot of trade problems already. Yeah.
I mean, we're feeling it with that LXR. So we've had to stop our exports to Europe. Because it's very, very complicated. And there is this kind of like trade deal in that you can, if something is 100% produced in the UK, you can sell it into Europe with no tariffs, and vice versa. But if you have, so for example, our tinctures, you might have the coconut oil might come from one country outside of Europe, the CBD maybe coming from the US, and so you have to kind of break it down to all your different ingredients, and then you're paying different tariffs on each one. And the amount of paperwork just for shipping, like a £45 bottle, it's not worth it. It's very sad, but yeah. But then times that by every other small, medium company in the UK. It's a huge impact.
Yeah. Also, I know someone you also must know from our little world. The bag lady was explaining to me that she's basically.
Yes, the bag lady.
She was basically explaining she would stop sending to the UK, and she's been studying all of this these new regulations or possibilities, and yeah, it's also
Oh
vice
wow! Oh
versa,
yeah!
not very
Oh
nice.
yeah! Yeah, yeah. No. I hear stories about in the supermarket now that you have like Italian style sausage and things like this. So, and the UK is not really renowned for their great sort of great food. So,
No. But do you think that now, because Brexit happened, that if you would consider that every country will at some point legalize, do you think that now, because Brexit happened, it will be faster than if Brexit would not have happened?
possibly, yeah, yeah. I mean, it could be a kind of silver lining that cannabis could be a potentially huge, well, it is a huge market in the UK, and if that's legitimized, so it's already the UK is like the first country to have this kind of regulatory framework around CBD, like very clear. So from the 1st of April this year, it's going to be it's like a fully legal cannabis market. Although THC is not allowed, but the CBD and other cannabinoids are. So there's kind of a few things going on in parallel. So on the medicinal side, medicinal cannabis is legal in the UK. However, it's not integrated into the National Health Service. So it's only available via private prescriptions, which was always quite expensive for people. But
Yeah.
now the prices are dropping and it's kind of comparable to buying it on the street. But obviously you've got all the sort of guarantees that comes through getting weed that's been kind of produced as kind of pharmaceutical grade. But then you've got kind of a sort of, because you can only get it through private, and private can be too expensive for a lot of people. A lot of people who really need cannabis can't work.
Yeah.
So they can't afford like £1,000 a month or whatever it costs. So they want to grow their own, but then they're in this sort of position where it's like they've tried everything, nothing's working. They're already suffering because of whatever disease they've got or their illness. So then they're kind of, their last resort is to grow their own medicine, and then they're turned into a criminal. It's just really, it gets my blood boiling. But they've come up with this concept now. It's called the CAN card. I don't know if you've heard of this.
Yes, actually.
And it's kind of like an amnesty for medicinal cannabis patients. So you can get your CAN card, and if the police come bash it all down, the neighbours are complaining about the smell of weed or whatever, you can show them the card and you can prove to the police that you are doing this because you have an illness that, if you could afford it, you would be going to a private clinic and having cannabis prescribed to you. Now that's kind of crazy. If you're rich, you go to a clinic, you get it prescribed, and then you're fine. If you're poor, you grow your own, you get locked up. It's like what? So yeah, so that's wrong now. Now I'm seeing lots of pictures on social media of people holding up their card, and I mean, as a cannabis patient myself, I've managed in Belgium. There's a kind of a way that I can have cannabis prescribed. I needed to pick it up from Holland, but just that feeling of having a doctor say, yeah, this is something that will do you good, and kind of having this kind of prescription, it's almost like like carrying around a letter from the king or whatever. And then there's a huge weight off your shoulders.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's that going on in the UK. I mean, and cannabis had always been sort of more or less decriminalized in the UK. It was never officially decriminalized because I think they like to still have that option of smashing it all down with paracetamol for whatever reason. But they're pretty lenient. It's kind of, this is up to about 9 plants or something. You can most likely, you'll just get a caution or something. So so there's this massive, and so there's this kind of massive market, like just sort of waiting for this product. Yeah, and obviously if UK's taking a hit from not being able to trade as it used to, and people losing jobs all over the place.
But for the weed, it only makes it
Could be
better.
quite attractive.
They're growing themselves in the UK, and you can really see legal or illegal. It doesn't matter. They make very good weed there as well.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I mean, one interesting thing is the growing hemp, and kind of changes, the potential changes in the law around that. That it's currently you're allowed to grow hemp in the UK, but you're not allowed to process the buds and the.
That's the same as in the Netherlands. So you have to export the buds, then you can make oil out of it, and then you can import it back.
All right. Oh, I don't even know if they can. I think they just have to destroy it in the UK. So basically, it just doesn't make it a financially viable crop.
No.
If you take that. So there were changes there. So in Guernsey, which is one of the Channel Islands, like in between the UK and France, they loosened up the laws, and they're growing it now as hemp and extracting it into CBD and stuff. And they actually have quite they do tolerate some THC in them. I don't know the exact figures, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I won't make up a figure, but it is quite it's quite a workable figure. So maybe that's a model that they could use throughout the UK. Who knows? But now, because they're out of Europe, the farmers are not restricted to this catalogue of seeds that farmers are in Europe. There's kind of there's like a catalogue, I don't know, like 70 different seeds that they're allowed to grow, which I think they just raised the allowable THC limit in this, so that maybe the catalogue is bigger now. Yeah, interesting times.
I think for sure one of the big advantages is actually for the UK that it is consisting of several islands. So one of them is obviously very big, but it's still, you could say, an island. And so because why I'm saying that is because here in the Netherlands, we've often, even if we put all our arguments aside and we would just legalize it, they are saying then, yeah, okay, but what about, have people coming from other countries driving here, taking it to their country? So what are our neighbors gonna say? For the UK, there's no neighbors, and if you you can't fly with it. Yes, okay, everybody knows. They check at the airport, so that's where it stops. Yeah, it's I think in that regard, it's for sure an advantage also.
Yeah. I think opinions are shifting. I mean, there are movements even within the sort of conservative side of kind of discussing the sort of merits of having a legal market. So that's something that you wouldn't have never had like 20 years ago.
What do you make actually of the weed experiment that's going on here in the Netherlands?
Yeah, so it's producing for the coffee shops. Mixed. I've kind of been pondering this for a little while. I mean, if you look at it from a consumer point of view, it could be quite good because you now have accountability throughout the entire supply chain.
Yes.
I guess the coffee shop. You look at it from a coffee shop point of view, that's maybe not so good because when you could like buy from multiple sources, maybe like including importing your hash from Morocco or whatever, you're suddenly restricted to these like 10 big grow ops that have kind of won their magic golden lottery ticket. And you're forced to do that, or your options do that or close. Then that's not so great. And then obviously for the growers, because you've only got these 10 people supplying the market, and that kind of sucks as well. But I mean, you have to sort of start somewhere. And then I guess it's not, you're not supplying like Rotterdam and Amsterdam and Eindhoven and some of the big cities. So it's kind of this like sort of experiment that's going. So, I mean, you guess that if that works well, then it's going to roll out to more cities, and hopefully they're going to open it up to more producers. I guess it's sort of like this. I mean, it's the same thing that's happening in the UK with the CBD market. As you sort of enter this kind of legal realm, everybody's sort of saying free the weed, make it legalized, and all that kind of thing. But then when steps are actually made in that direction, people are like, "Oh, hang on a minute, not like that."
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a bit the thing that the people who are making the laws don't actually consume cannabis themselves.
Yeah.
And
Not yet.
ideally, there would be some, kind of mix between completely free market, but then, in the end, if you want to sell it, yes, it should also be lab tested. And
Yeah.
so basically, like what you
Yeah.
have now in Spain, that would be ideal combined with lab testing.
Mm.
Then you have the
Yeah.
most diverse, small grows, good wheat, a lot of competition, diverse strains,
Yeah.
products,
Which is kind of
etc.
how how it went in the US, isn't it? It's like it's kind of then you have the market forces in action, but what prohibition kind of introduces is the whole. It just breaks the chain of accountability. If I go to a coffee shop that's not in one of this weed experiment,
Mm.
the weed that they're selling just kind of magically appears on the back doorstep. It's like they're not going to tell you where it came from.
You will actually not
From
be
the
able to
US.
buy some of it either,
Yeah, that's true.
because they will only be allowed to sell to indeed
The
the
Dutch
whole
people.
yes. So
So then
yeah,
it'll be a mystery. It'll be a mystery to the outside world as to what.
you can come here,
But
but you can only smoke our legal weed. You
wow,
cannot smoke our legal weed.
it's what's very strange about Holland is that cannabis is always treated by the government as if it's a problem.
Yeah,
That nobody's like, wow, this is a massive opportunity. They don't look at what happens in Colorado and see how
yeah,
traffic accidents have gone down, domestic violence has dropped, and they've got more taxes to spend on schools and libraries, all this kind of stuff. It's always sort of seen as this kind of problem that they have to try and deal with, which is
yeah.
unfortunate.
And what they have succeeded now and over all these years is their quest to make cannabis boring, in which they actually succeeded.
Mm. Yeah. Well, so the younger generation's not really turned onto it.
No,
I mean, ideally, you shouldn't really like. I suppose in a perfect world, you wouldn't have to rely upon any drugs. But
but some make it simply better.
yeah, that's true. And some are not as harmful as others as well. There's a lot of
Mm,
legal drugs that are sugar's a lot more harmful than cannabis in my mind.
yeah,
Sugar does them a lot more sort of damage to society than cannabis does or ever could. And all of the damage that you can kind of hang on cannabis, like I don't know, people going to accident and emergency because they think they're freaking out, this kind of stuff, is all directly related to the fact that it's illegal.
yeah,
So they don't know what it is that they're consuming, and because it's illegal, they're kind of you've got this kind of added paranoia to it all, and yeah, if you're smoking kind of 25% THC in large quantity, and you're kind of one of the people who are susceptible to maybe inducing some kind of psychotic episode, then yeah, you are going to have problems. But if it were, if you could buy it, and if you knew that you was like, you only have to do it once to know that it's not for you. And then if you have an option to buy it from a local shop where it's like more higher CBD, lower
yeah,
THC, and then you avoided that problem just by
yeah.
making it. And there's not many other problems you can sort of attribute to cannabis. I think.
No, that's indeed
So,
very good you bring that up, because indeed that's also what's been happening here, and what's also what you learn from prohibition, that when alcohol was prohibited, they weren't en masse illegally brewing beer. No, they were mostly it was the hard liquor, and the hard liquor also
yeah,
causing the problems. That's what we in the Netherlands then right now, and in most coffee shops, people just go for the strongest. But
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
would
yeah.
you
Yeah,
wouldn't.
this is exactly the same with cocaine as well.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do it.
As
You
soon as
wouldn't
you
do it.
make it illegal, you have to smuggle it. So if you're going to smuggle it, you need to make it as small as possible.
Yeah, but I don't
Mm.
think there's
And,
anyone who goes into a bar and says, "Give me your strongest liquor." Unless
yeah,
unless you're a pirate, maybe.
yeah,
But
that's it. Yeah, it was a really bad day.
Anyways, I think we tackled quite some subjects today. Is there anything you
was
would
good.
still like to mention or say or ask? Or
Oh, maybe I could say so that this tumor I mentioned earlier on, it was growing on my adrenal gland, and I had to take all these different drugs, and I managed to use cannabis as a way to avoid a lot of these pills. So they actually removed my adrenal gland, so they removed the tumor completely, and then I was cured. So that's a happy ending. So
yeah, for
then
sure.
the sort of the consumption of cannabis then kind of shifted from being a kind of a medicinal, I would say, necessity. I really feel that it saved my life. I think I was taking very dangerous or drugs that could potentially be dangerous if you take them in high quantity, and especially if you're mentally not very in a good place. But now it's more shifted to just as a kind of a nice way to unwind or relax. It's the equivalent of my glass of wine in the evening,
Mhm.
less damaging. Yeah.
No, I'm happy to hear, and I think
So
it's
yeah, so I just thought I'd point that out so people think I'm still not suffering from some crazy disease.
uh, no, for sure. It's an inspiring journey, and I think yeah, also the people who have not yet entered the cannabis industry, yeah, they might be inspired by the story, and
Yeah, I think I mean as the industry grows, it needs all of the roles that exist in all other businesses. It needs accountants, it needs writers, it needs marketing people, it needs growers, scientists, doctors, everything.
mm.
So yeah.
Anyways, thanks so much for having actually for the second time this conversation with me, because we tried it last week and through some technical difficulties, it didn't really work out for the recording, but
Yeah, it was good. That was give me a chance to warm up.
yeah. Yeah. I hope you have a great day, and yeah, I hope to yeah, see you whenever life is sort of back to normal.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Mauro. Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Take care.
Okay, bye.